Welcome to the Chiefs briefing for the June 20th, 2023 Democratic Party primary election. Thank you to all of you as our Chiefs and Assistant Chiefs for joining us today, and we're going to go over the legal and procedural updates for this election. If you have any questions during the briefing, please use the question and answer feature in Zoom at the bottom of your screen to submit those questions, and we'll wait towards the end of the session to answer those. First off, I want to make sure you're all aware of many important folks in our office, including our electoral board, which has a new member this year and a different composition. The chairman of the electoral board is the Honorable Kate Hanley. The vice chairman of the electoral board is Jeffrey Shapiro, the new member of the electoral board. And the secretary of the electoral board is retired ambassador Christopher Hensel. We, of course, have our general registrar, Eric Spicer, and our deputy general registrar, Cheryl Jones. My name is Robbie Udeshi. I've been honored to serve as the election officer manager in this office for about 5 years, but I now serve as our election manager, and I oversee the teams that handle all in-person voting before non-election day. We've hired a great new person to be our election officer manager, and she'll be joining us for the November election, and we're also soon hiring a new training manager. In the meantime, I'm very pleased to be joined by members of our election officer team, including Gene Fauble and Gene Tenson, to help me present the information in this briefing today. We're also pleased to be joined by a number of our essential office managers, including our IT manager, Cord Whitehouse, our voter services and now SDR manager, Bushra Ardalan, our deputy registrar for early voting satellites, Helen Tchaikovsky, our deputy registrar for absentee mail voting, Sean Stewart, our voting equipment and logistics manager, Tyrone Allen, our election inventory and supply manager, Kay Garrison, and the clerk to the electoral board and polling place liaison, Beth Methvessel. Our briefing today is going to have 3 parts. For about the first hour, we're going to go over the legal and procedural updates for this election, including over what's the overview of this election, what's new for this election, and things to remember before Election Day for opening the polls, during the day, non-routine and provisional voters, the same-day registration process, and closing the polls. Then we're going to spend about 20 minutes sharing updates from different office managers about things that will be helpful for you all to know as you prepare and execute your plans for Election Day. And finally, we're going to do a live question and answer session. So if you do have questions, feel free to submit them using the question and answer feature in Zoom, and then we will answer those questions towards the end of our briefing time today. So all told, this will be about 2 hours. All right, let's go through an overview of what you need to know for this election. First, here is a sample of the type of ballot you might see in some precincts, and there's a number of contests on the primary ballot this year, including for the member of the Virginia Senate, which is in some precincts, not all, member of the Virginia House of Delegates, again in some precincts, not all. Every ballot will have contests for the Commonwealth's Attorney, for Sheriff, and for Chairman of the Board of Supervisors. And some precincts will also have an additional contest for an additional member of the Board of Supervisors representing that district. In terms of our resource allocation for this election, each precinct will receive 5 to 7 total election officers, 3 to 4 poll pads, 2 express votes, 2 DS200s, 1 admin tablet, and ballots for 30 to 35% of active registered voters. We know one thing you're always concerned about is how many voters might you expect on Election Day. Well, historically, in Fairfax County, our primary elections have turnout from 5 to 10%, with some precincts going as high as 20 or 25%. That's why we've made sure we've ordered more than enough ballots for every precinct. I also want to remind you that we had redistricting occur, the decennial process, last year in 2022. As a result of that process, we had a number of new precincts and adjustments to precinct boundaries, but 96% of voters had no change to their polling place. And we imagine that most voters who voted in the November election have already become familiar with what their new precinct and polling place information may be. That said, please remember that voters' current elected representatives are still based on the so-called old district lines, and any information depicting a voter's current representative will be based on that information. But this is the year that every candidate is now running in the new district lines, both in the June election and the November election. And so after the November election, we will have essentially completed the full redistricting process, and the candidates that win in November will be representing the constituents in their new districts. If any voters have questions that you can't answer, by all means, please encourage them to call our office and we can help them out. Let's talk about a little bit about COVID-19 and how it affects the selection. Now that we're 3 years on, and certainly through the worst of the pandemic, all of our polling place procedures have returned to normal. So, for example, there's no need to have individual pens for each voter. You don't need to wear face masks. Certainly, face masks are now optional for officers and authorized representatives. And by law, we can never require a voter to wear a face mask. Of course, since we're only a week out from the election, if you or any of your officers do test positive for COVID or otherwise become ill in any way, let us know immediately and we will assign a replacement officer. Let's talk about the Chief's Notebook for a moment. So please remember to review the Chief's Notebook before Election Day. We emailed a PDF copy to all chiefs and assistant chiefs last week, and that's currently available on our training website. And in a new change for this election, what we've also done is taken each section of that notebook, the 17 different sections, and uploaded those as individual PDFs as well. So for example, if you want a refresher on just what do you need to know before Election Day, you can now click and open just that section or print just that section if you'd like. Or if you want to become more familiar with the same-day registration procedures, you can do the same thing, go directly to that section and print that out. If you do open the full notebook PDF, there is a table of contents, and each item in the table of contents is clickable, so you can jump to the right section. So we try to make that PDF as easy for you to use before Election Day as possible. As we've done for the past few elections, we are providing you with these color guides, and it's so important for you as the chief or assistant chief to make sure you hand them out to your election officers because it tells them what they need to know and do during opening procedures, during the day, or during closing procedures. Let's talk a little bit about co-located precincts. So for those of you who are not familiar with this concept, when we have two precincts in the same building, that's called co-located precincts. And there are 68 co-located precincts in this election. If you're one of those co-located precincts, try to do site setup at the same time as your other co-located precinct. And that way you can arrange for the tables and chairs and work with your building contact at the same time. If you're in a co-located precinct, always help voters get to the right place. Don't let them stand in line twice. So for example, I used to work in a co-located precinct as a chief, and what I would do is coordinate with the other chief. If we had someone who waited in line and got to the front and realized they were in the wrong place, I'd walk them over to the other precinct and take them right to the chief so they wouldn't have to wait in line again. If you are in a polling place building with co-located precincts, try to coordinate your curbside voting. You may share curbside voting parking spots if you'd like. You can also share one drop box if you're using the same building entrance or voting room. If you're on opposite sides of the building though, then of course you want to use separate drop boxes. And we send one drop box to every precinct regardless, so you're prepared either way. And at the end of the day, only one set of collector officers will return the materials for both precincts. And we've assigned those collector officers to the larger precinct of the two. Authorized representatives, often known as poll watchers, are an official and welcomed part of the election process. As a reminder, they do need to submit a paper authorization form to you, and then you have to verify that they're a registered voter in Virginia, usually just by looking them up in the poll book. They can move around the voting room, but should never disrupt the voting process. And if they do have any concerns or issues, they should direct them to you as the chief or assistant chief. Or they can call us in the office, or they can contact their party or candidate. And the Chief's Notebook has an entire section about authorized representatives that you should read over and be familiar with. We got a lot of questions before this briefing about firearms in polling places. So I just want to remind you that as of July 2021, the Virginia Code does prohibit any person from knowingly possessing a firearm within 40 feet of any building or part of a building used as a polling place. And the only exceptions for that are for law enforcement officers, a person who lives within their own private property within 40 feet of a polling place, pretty rare, or a licensed armed security officer who's working within that location. All right, now let's talk about some of the things that are new for this election. What I want to remind you of first is some of the changes that we continued on from November election. So those include the same-day registration process. That was a big change last year that was implemented in law. And of course, that continues in this election, and we want to make sure you're all well prepared for that. We're continuing to deploy and use the admin tablets, a separate iPad, for turnout surveys, the election night results survey, and the electronic provisional ballot log. We replaced the number 2 blue pouch with a number 2 envelope to better meet state requirements. And we also replaced the number 7 orange pouch with a number 7 envelope, but we're still using that orange pouch for some other items. The DST 200 scanners are going to print 3 sets of tapes in the morning and in the evening, and you're going to attach each one of those sets of tapes to the SOR-A, the SOR-B, and the printed return sheet. And finally, for your poll pads, you're going to keep them powered on when you pack them into their cases during closing procedures. So again, these were changes that were implemented for the November election that continue for this June's election. Now, what about some things that are brand new for this election? So I have a brief summary on this slide, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail about each of these. But just to give you a heads up, first, we've preloaded your poll pads with the final voter file to make that process so much easier. There are significant changes to when and how you're going to pick up your black kit, poll pads, Chiefs notebooks, and other materials. The sheriff's envelope delivery has now been eliminated. For the provisional ballot log, we're only going to be using the electronic version, with the paper version as simply a backup. We've created a new envelope called the emergency envelope to contain rarely used materials. We have new, more secure equipment carts that are being deployed in 90% of precincts. Ballots will now be delivered inside the DS200 ballot bin, so just a different place than you're used to. And we have a new officer position type, SDR specialist, that has been assigned in some precincts. So let's unpack each of these changes. And let's start with the poll pads, because this is the biggest change that impacts a lot of other things, and we hope makes your lives easier. So if you recall, in the past, you had to update poll pads with the final voter file. And we've tried different things over the years. For a number of years, we issued you an iSync drive that you had to update during opening procedures on election day. And it worked well for most precincts, but had issues in some other precincts. Now, it's obviously stressful when your poll pads aren't working first thing on election morning. In some elections, we tried doing wireless updates that you did either on election morning or the day before the election to your polling place. And again, it worked well for most precincts, but for those precincts that had issues, again, it could lead to some stressful moments or spending a long time at your polling place waiting for those updates to occur. Well, we want to take all of that stress away. We've looked at best practices from other jurisdictions around the country, and we've determined that the best way for us to manage this process going forward is that our office staff will now update all of your poll pads for you. This is simply going to be a step that you no longer need to worry about. Now, we have to do that on the at the end of absentee voting, which ends on the Saturday before Election Day, which means in our office, we're going to be updating about 1,100 poll pads on that final Sunday before Election Day. So all we're going to ask you to do is to come pick up those poll pads on the day before the election at one of 4 different locations. So again, we'll take care of all the poll pad updates for you. You just have to come pick them up. Now, if we ask you to come pick them up on the day before the election, we don't want to have to ask you to also come pick up your other supplies a week before Election Day. So we're kind of looking at all of our procedures holistically and looking at what's the best thing to do for you going forward and to simplify this. So what we're asking is that you just do one trip to pick up supplies on the day before the election. You'll get to do that at one of our 4 depot locations. So that includes either our office here at the Fairfax County Government Center, the Mount Vernon Governmental Center, the North County Governmental Center, or at Marshall High School. You'll simply come pick up all of your supplies, including your black kit, your poll pads, and any other final materials, and take them to your polling place. That means we are able to eliminate the sheriff's envelope deliveries, so you don't have to look or wait for the sheriffs to deliver an envelope to your home if you're a chief anymore. The one thing we do ask is that you complete a form that we've emailed you if you're a chief to select which depot you want to pick up your supplies from, presumably the one closest to your home or to your precinct, and at what time we should expect you between 1 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. Excuse me. And then on election night, you'll simply return your supplies to the exact same depot. When you do come to pick up your supplies, we're going to have a new change. You are going to have to show ID to receive those supplies. So just be ready with that. Any ID that works on election day will work for us. And then you're not permitted to take those poll pads home. So just make sure you take them, put them in your car, and drive directly to your polling place for your site setup. So again, this is a big change, but ultimately we hope it makes things a little bit simpler for you by picking up all your supplies together and no longer having to worry about how to update your poll pads or if there are any issues related to that. Now, one thing we know that you may want before Election Day is the printed copy of your Chief's notebook. I know that many of you really like to read through that notebook cover to cover. So this is optional, but if you are a chief, you have the option of coming to our office tomorrow, Tuesday, to pick up your Chief's notebook between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. All you have to do is send us an email and let us know what time to expect you. If you've already done that, then you're all set. And if you don't do that, that's fine. We will automatically put your Chief's notebooks into your black kit to be picked up on the day before the election. So again, we're making this option available for chiefs only, And if you're a chief, you can come, you'll pick up 2 copies of your notebook, one for you and one for your assistant chief, that you can give to your assistant chief at whatever time you meet, whether that's sometime before election day, or maybe during your site setup, or on election morning. So as a reminder, we have the admin tablets for this election again. So this is a picture of what they look like. They're preloaded with a number of apps, including for your turnout surveys, your election night results survey, some things to help with the SDR process. They have a keyboard. It's something that you may want to charge when you go to do your site setup, but in general, it's something that we implemented last year, deployed it widely in the November election. We think it's worked out really well, and that's based on the feedback we've received from all of you as well. One important part of the admin tablets is the electronic provisional ballot log. So beginning with this election, we're asking that you only enter your provisional ballots into the electronic log on the admin tablet. You do not need to enter them also on the paper ballot log. However, we're still going to pack and prepare a paper log for you so that if you do have any issues with your electronic log for any reason on election day, then you can switch over to the paper log instead. So again, you only need to enter them on the electronic log, and if that's not working, then switch to the paper log. And then ultimately, you'll return all of your provisional ballot envelopes in either the 1A SDR envelope or the 1A non-SDR envelope. Now, something new we've created for this election is what we call the emergency envelope. So we've noticed that there are some materials that you just basically never have to use. And so we want to put them into an envelope so that A, you know where to find it if you do need it and do have an emergency situation, but B, it's out of the way if it never comes up. So to start, we have 3 items in the emergency envelope. The first is the large green 1B provisional envelope. That's the envelope you use if a court extends voting hours past 7 p.m. I checked with all of our office staff. We can't recall the last time that actually happened. So this is something you almost never have to use or we expect you'll ever use, but we are going to provide it to you in case it ever does come up, but it'll be in that emergency envelope. We've also put the paper provisional ballot log in the emergency envelope because again, you're not going to need to use it if everything goes smoothly with your electronic log. And that was the case in the November election for every precinct. And finally, if you're a long-time chief, you might remember the last page of the chief's notebook had a form called the authorization to reproduce ballots. That's a form you would fill out if you were about to run out of ballots on election day and had to make photocopies of one of the ballots in your precinct. We've moved this form out of the chief's notebook and into the emergency envelope. And again, we never expect you to have to use it because we make sure we order enough ballots for every precinct. So all 3 of these items, we doubt you'll need to use them on election day. And so you'll leave them in the emergency envelope and you can just return it unused if you don't have to use any of them. Let's talk a little bit about your equipment seals. So in the past, we used to use green, yellow, and red seals. Well, we've simplified that now. When we prepare your cart and your other equipment, we're going to put a green seal on it at our warehouse and when it gets delivered to your precinct. We are now only giving you yellow seals to use. So anytime you open a piece of equipment or your cart and you have to reseal it, you're going to use a yellow seal. And just a reminder, we're now using a different kind of seal that can tear at the perforation. So you don't actually have to use the clippers, but we're still giving them to you if you need them. Let's talk a little bit about the equipment carts. So this is a big change that's been in the works for a long time. We had a January special election where we used these and it went very well. And so now we're ready to deploy them widely to almost every precinct. These are larger steel mesh equipment carts, and we're delivering them to about 90 to 95% of precincts in this election. These new carts will now hold the DS200 scanners and all your precinct supplies inside the cart. So you'll no longer get the DS200 separately. This is more secure, both during transport and during storage during that week before election day and on the night before the election and after election day. Now, one thing that's very important is that you do need to make sure you use 3 officers anytime you remove those DS200s from the cart or load them back in. And we've given you some written instructions. We're going to cover a little bit more in this briefing. And one thing we'll do is we will send you all a video between now and election day demonstrating what that process looks like. We want you all to be safe in how you do that, but it's a very safe and simple process. But because it's a change and it's new, we just want to make sure it's handled correctly. And in some cases, the new cart design may not fit into the voting room. It may not be able to pass through the door into the voting room. In that case, you are welcome to store the voting equipment cart in the hallway near your voting room. So just be aware of that. These voting carts are larger. They do fit into the building doors, but they may not fit into the voting room. So you may need to remove the supplies and put them in your voting room and leave the cart locked outside. And for a handful of precincts, we're still using the older style carts for this election, but we expect to replace them with the new carts for the November election. When it comes down to moving the carts, you want to make sure you're using the straps on the sides of the carts and make sure you handle that with care. Just make sure you don't put your fingers through the mesh on the side of the carts. For your ballots, the ballots are now being delivered inside the ballot bin of one of your DS200s. And you'll know which DS200 because there's a sticker, as you can see in the bottom left picture there, that says there are unopened ballots inside. So do not forget to remove the ballots from the DS200 ballot bin. However, due to some regulations in the Virginia Code, you're not able to unlock that compartment until election day. So just make sure you don't do that during your site setup on Monday, but on election morning, that's when you will present your keys envelope to all the other officers. They can see it's unopened. You'll open the DS200 keys, use them to unlock the compartment, remove the ballots, and sign the ballot receipt form. Now, we have a new election officer position that we're using for this election called an SDR specialist. This position is to help process SDR voters in every precinct because we know it was challenging for the folks that were assigned as chiefs in the November election to manage all of their chief duties and process the influx of new SDR voters. SDR specialists for this election have been assigned to the 25 largest precincts. And in all other precincts, the chief will perform the SDR duties. The reason we're not deploying them in every precinct this election is because in June primaries, turnout is much lower. It's only about a fifth of the turnout we get in November elections. And the number of provisionals is significantly lower as well. But in November, we're going to be ready and we plan to assign an SDR specialist in every precinct. So for this election, if you are a large precinct and have an SDR specialist, that SDR specialist should help assist and process SDR voters, ensure that provisional ballot envelopes and voter registration applications are completed fully and correctly. They're going to enter each provisional ballot in the electronic provisional ballot log. And those individuals can help perform other tasks like checking in voters or other officer duties when they're not processing SDRs. We also have a couple of new posters that we're using this election that replace some other materials. So on the left, that is our election officer recruitment poster. Instead of the small rack cards that we used to give you to put at your exit table, you now have a poster that you can post in the same area instead. And any voters that are interested in becoming an election officer can scan the QR code and fill out the application immediately if they'd like. The poster on the right is to provide information to voters about how to opt out of the permanent absentee list if they so choose. And this replaces the individual handouts we used to have that we asked you to post at each check-in station. All right, now let's go through some things you need to know before Election Day. First, if you haven't already, make sure you've added our office number to your contacts. Our number is 703-324-4735. And if we call you, make sure you pick up or respond to our voicemail promptly because we want to make sure we're resolving any issues that we identify between now and Election Day. If we email you, just make sure to respond to those emails quickly as well. And just a brief reminder for you and your officers that we are not using the election officer portal for this election. We've emailed all chiefs and assistant chiefs your precinct rosters, just like we did in November. It's a link to a live version of your precinct roster. In this election, you'll have 5 to 7 officers. And anytime there's a change, if there's a cancellation or a new officer assigned, as long as you refresh that page, you will see the latest assignments, just like what we can see on our end. We're using mostly Democratic and unaffiliated officers in this election, but in a handful of precincts, we do have some unaffiliated assistant chiefs or a very small number of Republican officers, just because there's only so many officers that are available for a June election, especially when people want to take a vacation. We've emailed all chiefs and assistant chiefs the polling place info sheet. So if you haven't already, make sure to contact your polling place this week as soon as possible, confirm the listed setup time, and verify your election day contact information is correct. As we said, we now have a new process for the supply pickups. So on the day before the election, every chief will need to go to a depot between 1 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. to pick up supplies. And the 2 main items chiefs will receive are the black rolling kits and 3 to 4 poll pads, which we will package it into a cardboard banker's box. As you can see in that picture, it takes up about the space of one seat, one back seat in a car. So just make sure you have enough room in your car to receive both of these items. And then once, as the chief, you receive those supplies, you want to go directly to your polling place for site setup. This is really important. I want to remind everyone, if you are at a school or FCPS facility, our office has paid to guarantee you a setup window between 4:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. So if you're getting any pushback from your school contact, let them know, hey, the Office of Elections has made arrangements with FCPS to guarantee a window between 4:30 and 7:30. We are paying for the overtime for a staff member from that building to be present there when you do your site setup. Of course, you need to coordinate the exact time with your building contact. So you can let them know, hey, I plan to be here, from 4:30 to 5:30 to do my setup, or from 6:30 to 7:30. But they do have to make that window of time available to you if you're at a school. And if you have any issues, ask them to contact us and we're happy to help. Because you'll have your poll pads with you, we do need you to lock those poll pads into the equipment cart overnight. To accommodate that, you'll have to take something out of the cart, and we encourage that to be the privacy booths. If you take the privacy booths out, maybe you'll set them up, you'll have room to put your poll pads into the equipment cart. As you can see in the picture, you want to use 3 officers to unload and repack the DS200s in the cart. And you do need to make sure you put the DS200s back in the cart on the day before the election. They need to be stored in the cart for the best security overnight before Election Day. And finally, for your black rolling kits, you're welcome to either safely store them in the voting room or to take them home on the day before the election. Just make sure, of course, to bring them back the next day. As it relates to your keys, if you're a chief, you're going to receive some keys on a blue lanyard. That's what you use to open your equipment cart on Monday for setup and during your Tuesday opening procedures. And if you are a chief or an assistant chief, you'll also receive an envelope with the machine keys. Those envelopes should not be opened until election morning to comply with state code. And finally, there is a clear plastic portfolio that used to come in your cart. Now it'll be in your black kit, and it'll contain the flag, the DS200 tape roll, some Dropbox hardware, all of your yellow zip tie barcoded seals, and 1 orange tab seal. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jean Faubel, to take you through opening the polls. Jean?
Hello, everyone. So we've gotten through all the sequence of events that need to occur before Election Day. It is now 5 a.m. in the morning, and there's a lot to do between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock a.m. so that your polls are open as required by law at 6 a.m. in the morning. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the 2 key things that you can do to enable you to have a smooth opening. These important keys are advanced preparation and delegation. So what you want to do is you want to first really familiarize yourself with the opening the polls chapter, all the tasks that are in there, and the order in which things need to occur. You also want to plan your opening assignments. You want to create your teams of officers who will be assigned specific tasks, and you should communicate their assignments to your officers in advance of the election in one of your end of the week communications so that they're aware of what it is they need to do. There is something that you as chiefs can do. It's suggested as an optional final before Election Day step, and that is to create a folder in which you will put all the things that you are going to immediately need at 5 a.m. in the morning, so you're not scrambling around in the black kit and elsewhere to find these. The list of those suggested items is in before Election Day, the very last optional task. And the chief and the assistant chief should confer in advance to agree on what the opening plan will be and to agree on which who is going to take which role and oversee which tasks. The second key is delegate tasks to your officers. Teams can work in parallel. You have a number of opening guides for the equipment and for different tasks. Distribute them to your officers. Make sure they understand what it is that they will be doing. And in particular, make sure they understand the instructions for opening the equipment. Use the checklists. It reduces the possibility for error and makes things just move more smoothly. So I'm sure you would have already told your officers that they must arrive no later than 5 a.m. on election morning. You can help them do this by telling them or describing them to them the entrance that you're all going to meet at 5 a.m. in the morning, and tell them where they can park so they're not sort of wandering around the facility. Okay, where's everybody meeting? You should also make sure they have your telephone number as one of their contacts. So if they can't find you, they can give you a call and you can let them in. Now, you're first going to verify that officers are on your final roster. There may have been last minute cancellations and replacements. Then you're going to swear them in. That's the first thing you do. If any officers don't arrive by 5:30, please call us at the general support number so we may be able to send reserve officers as replacement. And this note is for whenever you call the office, whichever number you use, always identify yourself by your position, like I'm calling as chief, the number of your precinct, and the name of your precinct. Like I am the chief calling from 100 Patriot, so that we know exactly which precinct we're dealing with and which person is calling us. So you're going to set up both DS200s. They each get fully set up and opened. You only need to use one, but you're always going to have that second DS200 ready in case there's some kind of problem with the first DS200, say a jam has to be fixed. So make sure you set up both DS200s. And this is very important. During opening, you're going to instruct your DS200 team not to press go to voting mode until you tell them it is 6 o'clock, the polls are now open. At that point, they will press that final green go to voting mode button. And as it says on the screen, if you need more extension cords, please ask your rover in advance so they can obtain those extension cords and deliver them to you. Now, we get a lot of calls between 5 and 6 a.m. on election morning. Please try to only call if you are experiencing an issue that prevents opening the polls on time. It would be like an equipment malfunction. It's the wrong election on your equipment. Something that will prevent you from having a working poll pad, a working DS200, a working express vote, or something else that you cannot open your polls on time. Otherwise, wait till about 6:30, and if you have any other ancillary issues, you can call then. And this is an important note. The Fairfax County Public Schools has refinished a lot of all their gym floors. Do not affix anything to the floors by any kind of tape, anything that has an adhesive surface. You cannot even use painter's tape. That's okay for putting posters on the wall, but do not attach anything to the gym floors by any form of tape. So we must be accessible and open and available for voting to any Fairfax County voter. And that includes voters who may have different kinds of disabilities. For example, you may have voters who use walkers, who use wheelchairs. We may have voters who have very limited vision or may be blind and may use the canes to help guide their way. So when you are doing your pre-election site visit, and when you're doing your setup, you want to make sure that there are clear paths of travel, both getting from the parking lot into the building and then interior lanes of travel from the entrance to the voting room. Things to look out for are, for example, if a water fountain protrudes from the wall and a a blind voter might walk into it, you may want to put cones around it. So when the voter is using the cane, they can feel the cone and have a signal to go around it. It's also really important to have clear paths of travel inside the voting room, especially so someone in a wheelchair has a lot of space to move around, a lot of space around whatever the wheelchair accessible table is, so that they can either do a 3-point turn or go all the way around in a circle. And you want pretty straightforward paths of travel so someone with limited vision doesn't have to walk a maze to get to the next stage of the voting process. We have a whole chapter on accessibility in the notebook. Please look at it in advance when you're laying out your voting room and when you're doing your site visit, so you can know how to address any obstacles that might be present at your facility. And make sure there's plenty of signage. If somebody has to go to a different door that's handicapped accessible than the other entrance. Okay, so we've got our polling place all set up. You've announced that the polls are open. Now we're going to move to your roles during the day, during voting hours. Now, you have some primary roles that you as chief and assistant chief will be fulfilling during the day. You're going to oversee your election officers. You're going to work with non-routine voters. You're going to interact with any people who are authorized to be in the polling place. For example, if the press comes in or you have authorized representatives. You especially want to make sure you're maintaining the security of the voting room and the voting equipment. And periodically, you want to go outside and take a look at what's happening outside with respect to the 40-foot limit or just what's going on out there. Now, obviously, you can't be everywhere all at the same time. So ask your officers to be your eyes and ears and to bring to you any things that they notice that might be a little troubling or they have concerns about. So ask them to help you. So now we're going to move to the roles of election officers. Remember, you're going to be overseeing the performance of your election officers. We have what are called function descriptions for every officer position: greeters, check-in officers, drop box monitor, ballot table officers, voting booth, DS200. There is a function description that describes their job and describes how to perform it. Please make sure you post these function descriptions at the duty station where these officers will be performing their during the day duties. Make sure you also rotate your officers so every officer has a chance to serve in all positions. And this is important. Whenever you do a rotation and you're moving officers into a new position, you want to monitor them, especially at the check-in tables. You want to monitor their first, like, say, 10 check-ins to make sure they are exactly following the script and doing the exact procedure for every single voter that comes in. This is really important to make sure all your voters who are routine voters are properly checked in, so that your numbers at the end of the day for numbers of voters checked in and numbers of ballot cast match. You see before you the check-in table guide. It's really important that you make sure that your check-in officers are following this script. The bold print is what they say to the voters. It tells them the steps, and it walks them through each screen. And what you want to emphasize to them in this election is when they say, I am checking in, say, Joe Smith, that they also state what the election is, so that if someone who didn't realize it's a Democratic Party only primary can decide, no, I don't want to be checked in, I don't want to vote in this primary, before the voter actually is checked in. So remind them to say, I am checking in Joe Smith for the Democratic Party primary before they hit that final submit button. And remind them that they have to see the screen. It has sort of a purpley bluish background, and it says the voter's name in big print, processed successfully with a ding. So it is only when they see that screen that they know that the voter has been completely checked in. And what is the magic word that you always tell them? If they are in doubt about any ID, about the voter, about an address, about a name, anything that's not straight routine, tell them to send the voter or to you or to call you. Call the chief. And there's a picture of the screen. This is what it will look like. So you know you've fully, the check-in officers completely checked in that voter. So there are certain kinds of limited duration licenses issued by the DMV that are acceptable for voting. Limited duration licenses are acceptable. Driver privilege cards are not acceptable for voting, but they look really, are identical in appearance. So next. So here, if you can ask your officers to look at all these three things. Do federal limits apply? Does it say 9 under restrictions? Does it say limited duration on the back? And they can ask the question, is this a driver's license or a driver privilege card? There should be printouts to be, which should be put on the check-in table so they have this. But you may also tell your officers, if this makes you feel more comfortable, that if it says federal limits apply on the top right corner of the ID, you can send those voters for the chief and you or the assistant chief will finish the analysis. So it's your choice, but these are the markings on the license or the document that's presented to you where you can determine if this is a driver privilege card or a driver's license. So now we're getting to some of the documents or some of the scheduled tasks that you will be overseeing during the day. This is the voter count worksheet. The purpose of this worksheet is, which you can, and the complete in this, you can delegate to an officer to do. You're going to take a look at how many total check-ins do you have on all your poll pads and the total ballots cast on the DS200s, which is the public count, and you on a 2-hour frequency. The reason why you want to do this is to make sure that the number of check-ins and the number of ballots cast matches. Now when they're doing this, they'll have to take into account, how many you check the voters in, but there's still some voters in the voting booth filling in their ballots. So they'll have to do the math. Why do we do this? To catch any discrepancies early so that we can see, oh, okay, is there a problem with not completing check-ins? Were there fleeing voters? So whatever it is, you can fix because you want your numbers to match at the end of the day for check-ins and ballots cast for your reconciliation on the statement of results. This is another worksheet, and you want your ballot counting team to write in for every sealed package that they open, each one of which contains 200 ballots, that they write down how many were counted. And there is a new guide for setting up the ballot table and the proper procedures for counting out ballots. So make sure you hand that guide out as well. If a pack, an unsealed pack, has more or fewer than 200 ballots, make sure they write that actual number on the worksheet. So when you're reconciling all the ballots that were delivered to your precinct versus all the ballots that are being returned to the elections office at the end, after closing, that you can reconcile those numbers, and you may say, hey, we were delivered fewer than it said on our sheet. Again, another scheduled task, and you can delegate this to one of the officers that you can do. You can set an alarm on your phone, but 3 times during the day, 9, 12, and 3, you will do the turnout survey using the links on your admin tablet. And again, hand out the guide for turnout surveys. And you really want to use the chief's notes. The chief's notes has a separate section for any kind of equipment problem, election day incidents, like say a voter tripped and injured themselves, voter registration issues, observations, comments, and suggestions. The electoral board and the Office of Election Staff reads every single one of the chief's notes, and we notice patterns. We notice things that maybe we could do better. So make sure you do record the operations of your polling place during the day. And on election day incidents, if there really is an incident that you write down, please also call the Office of Elections during the day when that happens so that we are aware of it. And this is one of those things when, you know how we talk about advanced preparation? This is one of the things you can do before closing, like say about 5 o'clock, or if you have a lull during the day, start your evaluations so you get that out of the way before you're overseeing all the other closing tasks. And this is an example of the kind of comments that you can put in. And if you're going to rate somebody either needs improvement or excellent officer, please put a comment that supports that rating. Okay, I'm turning it back to Ravi, I think.
Thank you, Jean. I appreciate that. All right, we're throwing a lot of information at you today, and we want to take you briefly through the non-routine voters and provisional situations that you may encounter. So just a few brief reminders. If you have an inactive voter, all you need to do is have them complete an affirmation of eligibility form. And this is simply the easiest non-routine situation you may encounter on election day. And as long as the voter completes an affirmation of eligibility, there is no need to call the office. So just a reminder about that. If you have a voter who brings their absentee ballot to the precinct and wants to vote in person instead, that's also easy enough. You just take the ballot from them, write absentee surrendered on the ballot, and then allow the voter to be checked in and vote routinely. So again, just a reminder. Here's a form that we're using this election. It's the request to remove name from permanent absentee voter list. So if a voter arrives and it shows that they are on the permanent absentee list and they indicate they no longer want to be, offer them this form. For our provisional materials for this election, remember that we have a provisional envelope with a barcode on the front, and we have the provisional voter notice. These materials are usually green, but due to national paper shortage issues, sometimes they might be printed on white paper this year. And always, the most important thing to remember about provisional ballots is that the electoral board, and only the electoral board, decides whether a provisional ballot is counted. So you should never tell someone their ballot will be counted because you don't know, as it is the electoral board's decision. All right, now let's talk about the topic that has been the most challenging for me since I've started working in elections, just because of how complex it can be sometimes, which is same-day voter registration. So same-day registration, as a reminder, is a provisional process. First, the voter completes a voter registration application, and then the voter casts a provisional ballot. Now, if you're a chief, you are required to take our SDR Basics online class, and you may have attended our in-person SDR workshops. If you're an assistant chief, remember that our SDR Basics class is available online for you to take a look at as well if you'd like. We're going to take you through some brief reminders about the SDR process today. It's not our full SDR training, but we do want to remind you of some of the steps since we're only a week out now. So what's important to remember is that the provisional ballot is considered only if the voter's registration application is completed correctly and the person is deemed qualified to vote. So our office staff will research that and process those applications immediately after Election Day. But again, ultimately, the electoral board will adjudicate all provisional ballots. Who's eligible to do a same-day registration? It's anyone who is qualified to register to vote as long as they are doing a same-day registration in the precinct where they currently reside. So this includes anyone who may not be registered to vote yet, or someone who is registered to vote but has moved and not updated their registration. What are the basic steps to follow for a same-day registration voter? Well, first, let me remind you, there's an entire section in the Chief's Notebook that spells this out in detail, but I just want to provide you a basic overview. So first, you would search for the voter's name in the poll book to confirm that they're not registered in your precinct. Then you would confirm the voter is eligible to do a same-day registration at your precinct once you verify that their address is within your precinct. 3, you'd have the voter complete a voter registration application. 4, you'd verify the voter's ID to be able to then, for them to cast a ballot. 5, you'd have the voter complete a provisional ballot and the small provisional ballot envelope. 6, you would add that voter to the electronic provisional ballot log. And 7, ultimately, you'd secure those completed provisional materials. Well, how does it work with SDR and the moving conditions? Remember that some voters are eligible to vote routinely in their old precinct or to vote an SDR in their new precinct. It's their option which of those two they want to do. And generally speaking, it's if someone has moved in the past year, then they may have the option of going back to their old precinct to vote routinely. It might be a slightly different ballot, but ultimately that's the voter's choice. So you always want to check that moving conditions chart, which we have updated for this election. You can see here, this moving conditions chart, what we've done to try to make it a little bit simpler for you is we've color coded the different possible scenarios, but also we've kind of grouped them together. So for example, if a voter has moved within the precinct, you can see they are always eligible to vote routinely. Or if a voter has moved outside of Virginia, they're not eligible to vote in non-presidential elections. Hopefully this makes it a little bit easier just to understand what the situation might be and what the voter's options are. So again, you would confirm the voter's eligible to do an SDR at your precinct, and you can use the My Neighborhood app on your admin tablet to help you with this. In the My Neighborhood app, you would open it up, type in the voter's address in that top red box there, and then you would go to the left sidebar and look to see what their voting precinct is. For this election, disregard any other information in the My Neighborhood app as it relates to their elected representatives or other district information, because it still reflects the districts that the politicians were elected under, which are the old district lines. So what you need to do is only look at the precinct information, not any other district information in the My Neighborhood app. You would then take that precinct information and look at the precinct locator or the directory of polling places, districts, and to identify what you would look there on the left. You would see this individual perhaps lives in precinct 105 Fairview. Great, that's in the 11th congressional district. And then you'd use that information to determine whether or not they are eligible to vote based on the moving conditions, based on the SDR criteria in your precinct. And remember, we've also put the same precinct locator document as a PDF on your admin tablet. So you can look at the printout or the PDF. When you have the voter complete a voter registration application, there's a number of fields that are absolutely required. So always double check that they have been completed and filled out. And in the top right corner, you're going to use a red pen or marker to write SDR. At the end of the day, all of your provisional ballots are returned in a 1A envelope, but you have to separate the SDR provisionals and return them in the 1A SDR envelope. And you have to return all the non-SDRs in the 1A non-SDR envelope. Now let's go through some situations. Let's say a voter just moved to Virginia and is not yet registered. Can they do a same-day registration? Yes. If the voter lives in the precinct at which you're working, they may complete an SDR. That's arguably the simplest SDR situation you may encounter. Let's take another one. What if the voter just turned 18 after the voter registration deadline? Again, they're not registered, and if they live in your precinct, they can complete an SDR. All right, let's go a little bit tougher now. Let's say the voter moved to a different congressional district this year in 2023. All right, so now we need to look at our moving conditions chart and identify where they fall. So we can see that they moved to a different county or congressional district, and they moved on or after November 9th, 2022. So they fall in that purple category. So the voter has the option of voting either in the precinct where they are still registered or to do an SDR at the precinct where they now live. Let's take another one. Let's say the voter moved within the congressional district back in 2019. It's been a number of years and they never updated their registration. So again, we look to see where do they fall in the chart. They move within the congressional district and they moved on or before November 3rd, 2020. So they fall in the green box there at the bottom and they can do an SDR in the precinct where they now live. That's their only option to vote. They are no longer eligible to vote routinely in their old precinct. Does SDR feel confusing to you? Because it sure still feels confusing to me. And if you're not sure what to do on election day, I have 3 words for you. Call the office. Bush and her team are ready and here to help you with any situation you may encounter. They have a lot more information available to them because they can access more details in the Virginia voter registration database. So simply give them a call if you're not sure what to do. I know when I get calls about the same-day registration process, I'm pretty familiar with it. I've studied for the past year, but I still try and defer those calls to Bush and her team because they're the ones that deal with it every single day. So that number, you can see it's at the top of the important phone numbers page, which is on the inside cover of the Chief's notebook, and it would be the number to call for the voter registration. All right, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jean Tenson now to take you through some of the procedures for closing the polls.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Let's talk about the last part of Election Day, the closing procedures. Preparation and delegation make for a smooth closing, just like they do for the smooth opening that Jean Falba was talking about. Plan out which teams of officers will perform which tasks. We've provided loads of checklists to follow and colorful one-page guides for many jobs. If you follow the checklists, you won't forget anything. At the end of a long day, everyone is tired and wants to hurry through closing so they can go home. But this is the time to take a breath, slow down, and pay attention to what you're doing. The order in which you close your DS200s at the end of the night matters. Let me explain why. We sometimes see people remove the USB flash drives while the DS200 is still powered on. This corrupts the drives and makes them unreadable. If that happens, you'll have to take all the ballots out of the DS200 and rescan them on your other machine. But if your other machine was already closed, then you'll have to reopen it, adding more time to closing. By the way, if you do ever find yourself in this situation, call tech support immediately for help so they can walk you through the right procedure. But it's really easy to avoid this problem. Simply close the DS200 with the most ballots first. If you only used one scanner during the day, close that one first. If you used both scanners, look at the public count on the screen. That will tell you which one you should close first, the one with the higher number of ballots. And remember, wait until the machine is fully powered off before removing those USB flash drives. You can tell it's fully powered off when the screen is completely dark and the red power light is off. Now let's talk about those USB flash drives. Each DS200 has 2 of them, an orange primary drive and a yellow backup drive. The orange labeled drives will go to the courthouse in envelope number 7, and the yellow labeled drives, will go to the Office of Elections in the purple pouch. The officers closing the DS200s will hand you 4 USB flash drives, 2 with orange labels and 2 with yellow labels. Take the 2 drives with the orange labels and put them in envelope number 7. Take the 2 drives with yellow labels and put those in the purple pouch. This is all documented in your Chief's notebook, but we've done something to help make this easier. We labeled them. The orange ones say number 7 and the yellow ones say purple pouch. The collector officers, there are 2 of them in most polling places. Co-located precincts will have only 1 set of collector officers that will take the materials for both precincts. Give the collector officers the 1-page closing guide so they know what to do. At 7 p.m., they'll make sure no more voters are waiting in line at the drop box to deposit their absentee ballot. When that line has cleared, they'll bring the drop box into the voting room, disassemble it, count the absentee ballot envelopes, fill out the chain of custody form, and seal them in the trip-lock bag. The collector officers must ride in the same car to the Fairfax County Government Center to deliver the purple pouch with those 2 yellow flash drives and the trip-lock bag with the absentee ballots. Collector officers don't sign other closing documents, and they don't return to the precinct to help you with the rest of closing. A common question we get on election day is what to do with the tear-off receipt from the trip-lock bag. It's considered a seal because of the serial number printed on it, so put that in envelope number 7 with all other cut seals. We continue to simplify the machine certification form. Let's look at the bottom part of the form you'll fill out during closing. Record the number of absentee ballots in the drop box, the trip lock security seal number, the seal from the purple pouch. That's a zip tie seal. We will also need to know the public and protected counts for the DS200s, seals of poll pad cases, DS200 lids, number of boxes of voted, unvoted ballots you're bringing back, and seals from the equipment cart and the orange pouch. Key thing here is when you and the assistant chief assign this form, make sure that all the boxes have been filled in. There should be no blank spaces on this form. The former orange pouch, number 7, has been replaced with the white paper envelope, number 7. Envelope number 7 will contain the 2 USB flash drives with orange labels from the DS200s. Remember, they're labeled number 7. You'll also put in the red barcoded stickers from the printer access doors of the DS200s, all cut zip tie seals, and the trip lock seal receipts. All of this is in your chief's notebook as a checklist. The back of the envelope number 7 must also be filled out. Everything you need is already on the machine certification form. So you're just copying information from that form to this envelope. It's really straightforward. For each DS200, you'll write down the machine's serial number, which is pre-printed on the machine certification form. Then fill in the opening and closing seal numbers, opening and closing protected counters, opening and closing public counters, and that's it. You don't need any other information. Don't write anything about any other seals or put any stickers on here. That's all you write down on the outside of the envelope. Ballot boxes. We've simplified this a bit starting in November. If you've worked enough elections, you may remember attaching 2 labels to the boxes of voted and unvoted ballots. Now you're going to attach just 1 sticker label to the short side, the end of each box. This applies to both your number 3 counted ballot boxes and your number 6 unvoted ballot boxes. Check to be sure the labels are filled out and that the ballots from each scanner are in separate boxes. I do want to point out something about the securing voted ballots 1-page closing guide. You'll have a printed copy of this. It's also in your notebook. Step 5 shows putting 2 labels on the boxes. That's incorrect. It is just the 1 label on the short end of the box. Please point this out to the people who will be boxing up your ballots. Take a look at this image of the poll pad. It's still powered on and it's still in the poll pad application, just as if it was still sitting on a check-in table. We want you to keep them powered on when they are placed in their cases and sealed with a zip tie seal. We ask you to do this because it helps us import the voter check-ins much more quickly when the poll pads come back to our office. And do please bring the poll pads back to the depot in the same cardboard banker's box you received them in. Not to worry, we will help unload them from your car for you. We know that box can be heavy. The old orange pouch has been repurposed as something for returning stuff, little stuff. It's now for returning your equipment keys on the wristbands, password cards, and other small items like lost IDs, cell phones, little things like that. This is sealed with a small plastic tab seal. You'll find that in the clear plastic portfolio in the black kit. What we don't want you to do is return any USB flash drives in the orange pouch. Please just equipment keys on the wristbands, password cards, and other small items. The lanyard key for the equipment cart will come back in the black kit. The statement of results also continues to be improved. We eliminated the poll pad certification form by integrating it into the SOR itself. The changes have made the form a lot faster to fill out. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on that. One section we want you to pay attention to is section number 4 at the bottom of that first page. If there are any discrepancies, we need you to tell us yes or no, but tell us something. Don't skip this. If everything's great, check no. That's wonderful. You did a great job. If there is a discrepancy, check yes. And then maybe one of those check boxes there with us is a kind of like a sample reason. will apply to you, and you can just mark off what applies. And if it's something else, just try to give it your best shot. We're just looking for some indication that you put an effort into figuring out what was going on there. Next, we'll take a look at a specific section of the SOR. Section 6 used to be a little ugly. There was a lot of math here. Add a whole bunch of stuff up, subtract something else, add more stuff, and it got pretty messy. And at the end of a long day of voting, you're tired. We get that. Now it is much more straightforward. It's just a column of numbers with one addition operation, and that's it. Do note that on the 5th line, where we're asking you for the number of provisional ballots in envelopes number 1A and number 1B, we do want you to include all the envelope 1A. So that's all the provisional envelopes in 1A SDR and all the provisional envelopes in 1A non-SDR. You're counting all those provisionals. The hand count report. This is pretty rare. In my years of doing a chief, I did this only one time for one ballot. It is rare, but there are times when a ballot can't be scanned by the DS200. The most common situation is probably a voter in a hurry who's made some kind of mistake on the ballot that prevents it from being scanned. And they're in a hurry, they put it in the DS200 and head out the door too fast, and the ballot gets kicked back. You try to put the ballot through, it's still being kicked back. In that case, you put the ballot in the auxiliary compartment and you try to rescan it at the end of the day. If it still won't scan, you will have to hand count that ballot. This form gives you a handy place to do that and tally them up. Like I said, it's rare. If you have any questions about the voter intent, call our office so that we can give you some guidance on that. The hand count report is returned in envelope number 2, but if you don't use it, which is going to be almost everybody, just return the blank form in the black kit. Keep it simple. The results notice and backup results notice look a lot alike. The main one is printed on white paper. The backup one is on blue paper. Start with the blue one. Fill out the backup results notice by copying the information from the SOR, like the voters checked in, curbside voters, total count of ballots, same-day registrations. We'll also ask for provisional ballots and their reason codes, and you'll be accounting for all of the votes in each contest by the DS200. You've got a column there for each DS200. Once you add those all up, then you'll copy the totals over to the main results notice. That will then be posted on the outside door of your building so that anyone can walk up and see what the results were in your precinct. The backup results, the blue one, goes in the black kit and comes back with you to the depot on election night. Once you've got that main results notice filled out, it's time to enter the results for all the contests on the election night's results form on the admin tablet. This replaces the process of calling in your information on election night. If you've worked a few elections, you may remember either the chief or another election officer would get on the phone, and it could take 10 minutes on hold, maybe another 10 minutes to go through a long, complicated ballot, reading off all the numbers of votes and getting them read back to you. And it just was pretty time consuming. Now you're going to put your numbers directly into this form on the admin tablets, and that will help you get out the door a good 10-15 minutes faster. You should get a thank you screen after you hit submit. Should take about 30 seconds or so. If it takes longer than a minute, call the tech support number on the inside cover of your Chief's notebook right away for help. They'll help you get the app restarted so that you can input your results. As always, we're providing you a signature checklist. This is something that you or one of your other officers can use to verify that all required documents have the appropriate signatures. As long as you follow the checklist, you should be good to go. If you don't, and some documents are missing a required signature, then your officers will have to come to the office after election day to sign those documents. Don't be that precinct, please. use the checklist. You can hand this to one person and it'll be their job to like double check everything. Generally speaking, if a document needs only one signature or two signatures, we expect that to be the chief and assistant chief. If it's missing, we're going to call you as the chief or assistant chief to come and sign, because it's your responsibility to make sure all signatures are completed correctly. So just use the form and you'll be all set. You're almost done. Time to call or text your rover to let them know you're leaving your polling place and on your way to return materials to the depot. The chief election officer of each precinct will return these materials, or if you mutually agree, the assistant chief will do it instead. Like everything else you do on election day, there's a checklist for this in the chief's notebook. And if it is going to be assistant chief returning materials, just give us a call or an email to let us know that. Finally, you'll want to return your materials to the same depot that you picked them up from the day before on Monday. So if it was the government center, come here. If you picked up at North County, go to North County. We're going to be expecting you at the same place that we saw you on Monday. Once you've dropped everything off, go home, go to bed. And now back to Robbie.
Thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you so much, Jean. All right, we are at almost at the end of part one of our briefing here. So let's see, let's take a recap of some of the important changes for this election. Again, just a reminder, we have preloaded your poll pads with the final voter file, so you no longer need to worry about that. We're asking all chiefs to pick up all the supplies that they need the day before the election. There is no more sheriff's envelope delivery. The provisional ballot log is electronic only and use the paper version only as a backup. You now have an emergency envelope with rarely used materials. More than 90% of precincts are receiving a new equipment cart. Your ballots will be delivered inside the bottom bin of the DS200. And about 10% of precincts will have an SDR specialist. If you do have any questions about anything that we've presented today, you are welcome to ask us now during the Q&A session or to send us an email afterwards as well. And with that, we come to my favorite part of our briefing, which is to swear you all in. So if you would all raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will perform the duties for this election according to law and the best of my ability, and that I will studiously endeavor to prevent fraud, deceit, and abuse in conducting this election. Congratulations, you have now been sworn in and are ready to serve in this election. Now, to meet legal requirements, we're going to email you all a link in about an hour to confirm that you've watched this briefing and understood the content. Just make sure that you fill out that form to acknowledge and to let us know that you've completed this briefing. And if you're watching the recording of this briefing, then it's in the same email that has the link to the recording. So we're almost done here. So this is again, the main portion of our briefing that we're concluding. If you do have any further questions, you're always welcome to contact us at our email address or phone number on the screen. But we also want to answer your questions that you may have right now. So feel free, if you haven't already, to submit any questions into the question and answer feature session. Into the question and answer feature at the bottom of Zoom. While you're submitting your questions and our team starts looking at them and preparing answers to them, I'm going to ask my fellow office managers and senior staff to share any updates or information that they may have for you. So I'm going to ask Eric and Cheryl and Bushra and the others, if you would like, you're welcome to provide any updates to all of our election officers. I can see that we have almost 350 of our chiefs and assistant chiefs with us today watching live. So let's see, let's start. Eric, Cheryl, would either of you like to share any updates with all of our wonderful chiefs and assistant chiefs?
I don't have any updates, but I just want to thank everybody for your hard work, your dedication. We couldn't do this without you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric. Cheryl is
Yeah.
our Deputy General Registrar and also manages our provisional process. Cheryl?
Yeah, again, thank you, chiefs. It's a heck of a job. Most of us in this office have been chiefs or assistant chiefs, so we've been in the trenches with you. And Ravi and his team, every election, work harder and harder to make your job easier, to make it clearer. The Chief's manual continues to improve every year. So be sure to look at that. And the other thing, just to reiterate, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us. We're not going to think poorly of you. We'll think poorly of you if you should have called us and you make a mistake. Then that's no good. So go ahead and call us. We have people standing by. And from the provisional point of view, or the provisional angle, it is a bit of confusing with the SDR, and we had a lot of chiefs confused in November. So we had voters who were given SDRs incorrectly, and some of them couldn't vote. So you really need to think this through. If you find that that voter is on your poll book, then check your move voter rules. And usually the voters within the move voter rules, they're a regular voter, they moved in the last 6 months or something, they can vote in your precinct. So you can offer them a regular ballot, because if you give them an SDR and they're on your precinct, but they've moved to another precinct, but they're in your poll book, they've come back, they can vote there. But if you give them an SDR and they put their new address on it, now look what's happened. They're voting in the wrong precinct. You've registered in a precinct where they can't register. You have to register in the precinct where you live. So just think about that tonight when you're going to bed to get it straight in your head. So that voter can go to their new precinct and fill out an SDR, then they will vote a provisional ballot. But if they're on your poll book, stop and think. You have any questions, call us up. Those voters are registered. They're registered to vote in your precinct. They can fill out an application to change their address, but that's not a same day registration. That goes in your regular number 8. We'll process that after the election. And for the next election, they'll be good to vote in their new precinct. Again, give us a call if you have any questions. The other important thing is that the SDR applications and provisional envelopes go in the 1A envelope that's marked SDR, and all the others just go in the regular 1A envelope. And you say, what's the big difference? I know when I was a chief, I would sit there and say, look at all these bloody envelopes. Why do I have all these envelopes? Why can't we just put everything in one? What difference does it make? It makes a difference because they have different destinations when they come to the office. So the 1A envelopes that are marked SDR, they go to Bushra and her team. She's our voter services manager, because they handle all the SDR applications and provisional envelopes. And the regular 1As goes to a totally different team, and they're just handling the provisional envelopes. Once the application is approved, those provisional envelopes are treated the same way. We look and make sure that the signature is there, the address, and so forth. So you just have to be sure that everything is filled out correctly, because if you don't look at it and the voter doesn't sign it, then by law, we can't count that ballot. Most likely it's up to the board, but the law says that the envelope must be signed. I think that's about all I have to say. I hope I haven't confused you more. I'll turn it over to Bushra. She may have something to say about applications.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for all your hard work. I just want to remind you that we are here now on election day, and whenever you have a question, to support you. Regarding the SDR, your chief note was explained very well, and what we want you to double check that application is fully complete, and please double check the application with the provisional envelope that they are matching. The last 4 digits is required on the envelope, but full social security number on the voter registration application is required and should be signed by the voter, both envelope and the application. Other thing that I want to add, please fold the application around the provisional envelope and insert it in your 1A SDR envelope. The other thing, please do not mix non-SDR voter registration application. A voter will come to your precinct, maybe they change their name. They only need to fill out a new voter registration application. That application will go to envelope number 8. Please do not mix those two applications, SDR and non-SDR voter registration application. Other thing, if you have any question, please reach out to us. We are here starting 4:30 a.m. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Cheryl and Bushra. And I think it's so important, just as they both noted, to make sure you return your provisionals in the right envelope. If you think it doesn't matter, or why does it matter, the part to remember is that we had almost 7,000 provisionals in the November election, and we want to make sure that we process those as quickly and as efficiently as possible, which is why we simply ask you put them in the right envelope. All right, next, let's go to our IT manager, Cord Whitehouse.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I think most of what I have to say has already been covered, but just a couple quick items to remember as you go about your day. Item number 1 is the biggest change that we did that hopefully should be a relief for all of you, is that when you receive your poll pads and you pick them up from a depot, they will be fully updated and ready to go. So there is no need to do any sort of update via iSync or wireless on the poll pads. They will be completely prepared for your precinct. The one thing you will want to check is when you open them up on election day in the morning and you power them on, you want to make sure that they show your correct precinct on the screen when you open the poll pad app, just to ensure that yours have not gotten mixed up with a different precinct. If there was any sort of issue where you're not seeing the right precinct, you would want to call Tech Command immediately and we would get some replacement devices out to you. So not having to update them is a great change with us doing them all in-house. Hopefully that should make your day go a lot smoother. Other than not having to update them, the operation of the poll pad should be very similar for anyone that's used them in past elections. The operation of them will continue on as normal. And as we noted at the end of the night, yes, if you could leave the poll pads on the home screen as if you were going to check in another voter, so the home screen of the poll pad app, and close them back up in the case, that allows, as they are traveling and making their way back to our central office, they have the ability to send up their voter credit. And so if we can collect as much voter credit as we can, that makes our process on the back end a lot easier to get that voter credit into Veris. So again, if you can leave them on the main screen of the poll pad and just close them up inside the case when you send them out, that would greatly help our team on the back end. So we appreciate it. Just thank you again for everything you guys do. And yeah, thank you to Ravi's team for all the hard work he's done in preparing this today and all the work he's done with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. But the real thanks goes to all of our chiefs and assistant chiefs for making sure everything runs so smoothly for all the voters on election day. Next, we've got Tyrone Allen, our voting equipment and logistics manager. Tyrone, we can't seem to hear you. I do see that you're unmuted, but we don't hear you. We're going to jump over to Kay for a moment, and we'll come back to you. Kay Garrison, our inventory and supply manager. Would you like to share any updates with the team? Kay, if you're speaking, we also can't hear you.
Hello?
There we go. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to all of you for serving. We really appreciate it. I know it's hard to get folks this time of the year, so thank you so much for serving. I just have a couple reminders, and that is, please remember to return your supplies like your scissors and the clippers and the little moisture bottles. And a big help in the moisture bottles would be if you would kindly pour them out and to return them empty and not leave the water in them. Another thing is, which is going to be new, and Ravi has said this, but I just want to tell you again, please make sure to bring a photo ID to pick up your materials, because that will be something we will be asking for. And the other thing is, if you have anything about your supplies you can't find, or you think you're missing, or whatever the case might be, go ahead and give me a call at 703-324-4757, or email me at kay.garrison, GARRISON, at fairfaxcounty.gov. And like I say, if you have any questions that refer to any of the supplies or anything, please let me know. Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you very much, Kay. Tyrone, are you ready to go? No, it still looks like some technical issues, so let's go to our next speaker. Beth Methvessel, Clerk to the Electoral Board and Polling Place Liaison. Do you have any updates for our chiefs and assistant chiefs?
Not any updates, just a couple of things I want to reiterate. And once again, thank you. It was an outstanding training. And I'm very appreciative of all the chiefs and assistant chiefs that are serving in this election. I just want to remind you all that if there are any changes to a voting room or an entrance, please let us know. It's very important that we have the accurate information here at the office where the voting will occur at your facility and the entrance that you will be using. And speaking of entrances, there is a possibility that your facility will have two entrances. One will be a separate ADA entrance, an accessible entrance. Please remember that if you do need to designate two entrances, you must have accessible voting close to the ADA entrance. For those of you that are in schools, you should contact the facility, even though they are expecting you between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. But please let them know what time you are coming so that they know you're coming and they're ready for you. Those of you that are in other facilities or private facilities, again, please make contact with the facility coordinator and let them know when you are coming. A few of you will be chiefs at private facilities that are requiring you to pick up an access code or a key, and they would like you to do it prior to Monday. So do not wait and we then find out that the facility is closed and there's no way for you to get in there and do your setup because you didn't pick up the access card or the code that you needed or the key. In fact, I think there are some libraries as well that are allowing access on Monday and on Tuesday using an access code. And so that's all I have. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Beth. And I know some of you as chiefs and assistant chiefs that have been reaching out to your polling places, making visits, have already been in touch with Beth, and she's been terrific at helping resolve some of those issues that we've already seen come up. All right, let's see. Next, let's go to Sean Stewart, our Deputy Registrar for Absentee Mail Voting.
Thanks a lot, Ravi, and a warm hello to everyone out there. You're from your colleagues in the Absentee Voting Division. We've been staying busy for a while and excited to look forward to Election Day to keep that ball rolling. For some of you who might be interested, the office mailed out just over 40,000 ballots for this election for the Democratic Party primary. We've received back just over 12,300, so we've got plenty still out there. That's only about a 31% return. So we know that there are voters who are interested and ready to get those back to us, or at least we're hoping they're interested right after they find them on the dining room table where they've been buried for the last 4 weeks. So for all of your officers out front and your collector officers, just a quick shout out and commendation to the EO team. There's great information in that Chief's notebook covering everything from putting together your drop box to its placement, monitoring during the day, and then certainly the importance of getting all that back together for your collector officers at the end. So make sure you refer to that outstanding information with any questions that you might have. Couple of quick things to mention for those of you who are working out front, election officers who are monitoring the drop box or at the entrance. Please make sure you refer voters' questions about any absentee information to that envelope itself. Or if they have anything that goes beyond that, certainly status or procedure or policy, please feel free to have them reach out to the office. Those phone numbers that you have available, folks answering will be able to get that information or direct it to the absentee team to make sure we get that information to them. Another quick note, we always try to highlight this, but just a reminder that we ask and encourage officers to not serve as witnesses. Please do not sign the envelopes for voters that are coming in. It may be anyone aged 18 or over who is not their employer, their labor representative, but based on code interpretation and just best practice, we would remind you not to sign those. But please encourage somebody to do that so they can drop those envelopes in that drop box. Those of you that may be interested, of those 12,300 that have been back, over 1,000 came back by drop box, including I think almost 170 with our expanded early voting on Saturday. So again, those voters should be out there and ready to make a deposit, and we'll be excited to get them back. Wish you nothing but the best as you get prepared for Election Day. Happy to assist with any absentee questions that might pop up. Take care and keep on going. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sean. And now let's turn to our deputy registrar for the other type of voting that happens before Election Day, our deputy registrar for early voting satellites, Helen Tchaikovsky. Helen, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Ravi. I wanted to say that we are busy at the early voting satellites. We've been open, 3 locations were open May 5th. The other 13 opened this past Saturday. Over 5,500 people have voted in person. And as Sean said, the drop boxes have been very active. In fact, on a couple of days, there were more ballots in the drop box than came to the voting location. So, but the voting locations are now all busy. I will say that in the Mason district, it's particularly busy. That's a very active race. So those of you who are working in that area, in the Mason district, I think you'll see a lot of activity. So have fun.
Thank you very much, Helen. Are there any other managers that wanted to chime in? Tyrone, Yoon, anyone else?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, we finally got it straight. First, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today, and thank you for all of your hard work and support. A special shout out to Ravi and the team for an excellent presentation. The information was concise and very much needed. Thank you again. We do the voter equipment in our division, and so I want to remind you, the chiefs, as you pick up your iPads and your black kits on Monday and go to your precincts to check the carts to make sure that the equipment that is on site is your equipment, that it has not been, the equipment has not been delivered to you by in error, that it is the precinct equipment that you were expecting. Second is that in the new carts, all of the new carts do not fit into the actual voter rooms, and it's okay. They are supposed to come into the building. You have to remove the materials and machines from the cart, and they can remain in a hallway or stairway, keep them locked. But it's okay. Lock them back up. They're double locked and sealed. The equipment machines have to stay in the cart overnight, Monday night. And then you can remove them for good and carry them into the voter rooms on Tuesday morning. Other than that, I think we're going to have a very, very successful election. Thank you once again for all your hard work. And if there are any questions or problems, please, please, please call Tech Command. Just reach out to us. We're right here. We're at your disposal, and we will gladly help walk you through solution for whatever problem you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tyrone. Quick check. Does any other manager or office staff want to chime in and provide any information to our officers?
Hey, Ravi.
Yes.
This is Cheryl again. I just like to add one thing. If the chiefs and assistant chiefs would like to learn just more about elections in general, we've got a terrific set of FAQs on our website. A lot of times voters have questions, you'd be able to answer them. And I think the more you understand the bigger picture of elections, the more effective chief and assistant chief you could be. So check that out. It's on the Office of Elections website, and there's a button there to click for FAQs.
That's a great reminder. Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, our website is a fount of good resources. And if you haven't already, definitely check it out. If nothing else, for things like sample ballots, information about early voting, locations and hours, certainly the FAQs. Yep, it's terrific. All right, unless there's anyone else that wanted to say something.
Hi, Ravi. Actually, I just wanted to introduce myself to chiefs and assistant chiefs.
Yes, please, Yoon, our HR manager.
Okay. Well, I was definitely impressed with the training this afternoon, and I joined the Office of Elections end of January. My name is Yoon Choi Lee. For those of you I haven't met, I'm the new HR manager, and this will be my first election, and I'm very excited and looking forward to seeing all the chiefs and assistants and the election officers, on the 19th and the 20th. So for me, the training was very good. Robbie, thank you so much, and your staff. It's awesome. I could sort of understand the process in place, and I think I could go and do the job after the training today. Ha ha ha. But seriously, if the chief or assistant chief has any HR issues or questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I will try to assist as much as I can.
Wonderful. Thank you, Yoon. And I will happily take you up on that because we always need more chiefs and assistant chiefs at our precincts.
Sign me on.
Wonderful. All right. With that, we are now going to turn to the question and answer portion of our briefing today. We have about 20 minutes. We've been answering a lot of your questions in writing, and we want to try to answer as many other questions as you've submitted as well. I know we've had some very frequent questions submitted by some of our chiefs and assistant chiefs. So I'm going to turn to Jean and Jean, who are going to help triage some of our questions and direct them to the right staff to answer them. Jean?
I collected questions related to sort of before election day. So I thought we might start with that topic first so we can go a little bit in chronological order. And there were several questions related to this. If it's for people who either have a non-responsive facility staff or they have a private location or something like community center and it's not open, it's hard to reach staff, it's hard to get a setup time set. What is the best way to handle this? And if we can't get the setup, a setup time set up at one of these private places, what do I do with the poll pads overnight?
Sure. Let me take the first stab at that. I'm going to ask Beth to chime in as well. So I want to reiterate that we have obviously updated procedures as it relates to supply pickup and your site setup at your polling places now. And so what you'll want to do if you're the chief is you're going to want to pick up your supplies about an hour or so before you go to do your site setup. And some of you have filled out the form indicating the time you might pick up your supplies. If there's a 5-hour difference, we're going to be calling you to find out what's going on and to adjust those times. But essentially, you should pick up your supplies, let's say at 2 o'clock, and then go to your site at 3 o'clock to do your site setup. If your site is not allowing you to do setup at a time that's feasible, give us a call in the office and we can coordinate with your building contacts. If you're not able to get in touch with your building contacts, give us a call or an email. Again, I want to ask on Beth if she wants to chime in on this and what other techniques and resources our chiefs can employ to help improve that relationship with the building contact. Beth?
Right. Thanks, Robbie. My suggestion is please do not wait until Monday to determine when you're going to go over to your facility. That you all know where you're being assigned. You should have your building contact. And I would make sure before you even make an arrangement to come over and pick up your poll pads that the site already knows that you're coming at X time. Once again, for those in schools, your time is set officially between 4:30 and 7:30 p.m. And of course, please don't show up at 7:30 p.m. That's a little bit late. So, try to fall into a reasonable time during that range. So that's my suggestion. If there are any problems that you receive from your building contact with respect to Monday being a holiday and they're closed, please let us know right away so that we can work that out. We've been making quite a few calls this past couple of weeks and making sure everybody's on the same page. So far, I think we're in good shape. But once again, we can't help you if we don't know what's going on. So if you do reach out to your facility contact and they say, oh, we can't let you come in on Monday, that's when you need to call us and let us help you.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay, yeah. So we have some, again, before election day stage of the proceedings, some pickup questions. One is, can the assistant chief pick up the hard copy manuals on Tuesday because the chief does not have transportation on Tuesday?
Yeah, give us a call if there's an issue with that. We can figure out something. I see that, I think Peggy Woods Clark submitted that question. We can try and make some alternative arrangements. But in general, it's the chief is the one who would be coming to our office tomorrow, Tuesday, to pick up both chief's notebooks for them and the assistant chief, and then they can deliver it to the assistant chief whenever they next meet.
And then sort of a related pickup question. If, and this is probably a K question, if because we have to pick up supplies and go straight to the polling place to sit up, will someone be available for a call if we are missing something?
Yes, I should be in the office that day. And also, that's why I gave you the email address, because you can email me if I'm not and catch me that way. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. And yeah, we'll definitely have staff here on that Monday evening to help support you as you have any issues. But also contact your rovers. They're out in the field. They might be able to come out to your polling place and help you with your site setup or to look for the materials or anything like that.
And finally, what am I allowed to take home on Monday night? Can I take the black kit home with me? Any other supplies home with me? Or does everything have to be left in the voting room where it's set up?
Sure, great question. So obviously we have a change in procedures this election, but we also need to figure out what can fit in the cart, what can't fit in the cart. So as I mentioned earlier, the most important part is that your poll pads and your DS200s must be locked in the cart overnight for best security practices. But as it relates to your black kit, if you'd like to leave it in a secure area of your voting location, that is permitted, or just take it home with you and bring it back the next day. And for those of you that used to spend the week before election day kind of going through your supplies, making sure everything was right, that's something you could now do after your site setup, right? You can take your kit home with you and go through your materials at that time. I also want to take a moment while we're on this topic, because I saw a lot of questions about the DS200s and unloading them from the carts. So I just want to take a moment to address some of that. So yes, on the Monday before election day, the day before the election, you want to have 3 officers to unload the DS200s from the cart. And we'll send you a video of what that process looks like. You can remove the DS200s from the equipment cart to get access to the other supplies. There's only 2 things that are behind the DS200s, and those are your yellow curbside A-frame sign and your drop box. So if you don't want to, you don't have to take the DS200s out of the cart on Monday at all. You could leave them in, and then when you take them out on Tuesday morning, that's when you could grab your yellow curbside sign and assemble your drop box at that time. Also, you can choose to remove just one DS200 and extract those supplies and put the DS200 back in. You have multiple options, and I encourage you to coordinate with your rover about that. And then, as I said, for the best security practices, those materials do need to be locked in the cart overnight and then removed again on election morning.
I have a question for you, and that is, if an election officer reports having contracted COVID-19, will that be reported to other members of the team who finds out about that?
Thanks, Gene. I think I can take that question. So at this point, where we're in the pandemic, obviously, if it's the week before the election and one of your officers tests positive for COVID or just otherwise becomes ill in any way, notify us in the office. We'll take the appropriate procedures. We'll notify the other officers if needed, especially if there's been any contact among the officers, and then we'll follow all of the required procedures that we need to. But obviously, circumstances have changed 3 years on into this pandemic. The federal requirements around COVID have changed, and so we'll make sure we follow those requirements. The most important part to me is that we want to make sure all of you as officers are safe and secure on election day. And sometimes, out of an abundance of caution, we do have to replace an officer, even if they think they might be feeling better by election day.
And one final before election day question, is it okay for chiefs to communicate with their election officers with a group chat over the phone, or can we just use email or individual phone calls?
Sure. So we provide you your precinct rosters that have each officer's name, phone number, and email address. Our suggested best practice is to initially start by communicating by email. You could BCC your officers if you want to protect their email addresses. We know some officers have some concerns about that. You can call officers individually, you can text them individually, but if you'd like, you always have the option of doing a group text, but some officers aren't comfortable with that, so we suggest you use other methods first, or to check with your officers that that's okay with them before you do that.
Okay, I'm going to move to supplies. And one of the supplies is what should we expect to receive in the final envelope that we pick up on the 19th?
You know, the fun part about our final envelope is it depends on what happens in this last week before Election Day. If we notice that, for example, someone contacted us yesterday and they noticed that there was a particular sentence in the chief's notebook that's not quite correct for this election. So we'll determine, do we need to reprint that page and give it to you all in the final envelope? Or are there questions about certain procedures and we want to provide those to you in writing in addition to anything else we provided? So we'll figure that out. But the two primary pieces you'll have in that final envelope or in your otherwise in your kit that get packed near the end are the final, the close of books report and the final absentee list. So essentially changes to the list of registered voters or their eligibility to vote in this election. Those are the two final items that we usually get packed. And so those will usually be in that final envelope. Two things you're not going to have this election are going to be that used to come in your final envelope or your sheriff's envelope are your iSync drive. Again, we've replaced that now. We will update all the poll pads for you. And the voter file cross-check form, which was another form you used to double check that the poll pads had been updated correctly. We don't need to provide that to you anymore because we take care of all those updates for the poll pads.
Okay, I have a question. There are two questions. One is kind of supplies and one is maybe for Bushra. Will there be maps showing both old and new district lines? And then from a couple of other people, I'm getting conflicting information about the new state Senate district boundaries for my precinct. What the county tells me is different from what the state website says. And I may have voters who are raising the same question. What do I tell them?
So actually, the question about the map maybe goes to Kay, not to me, because I don't know if we are providing map or not.
The second question about conflicting information about the precinct Senate boundaries between the state and what the county's telling them, and the chief is a little concerned about what do I tell my voters if they raise that question.
So if they go to state Senate, what they are saying is the old representative that they were the elected official that they represent old line. But if they want to double check, they can call us. We have correct information, because for now, for all others website, even my neighborhood, the elected official has not been changed. Those are represented until result of November election.
Thank you, Bushra. And I just want to take this opportunity to reaffirm to everyone, yeah, this is kind of the tough part we're in with when redistricting happened. So essentially that My Neighborhood app that's on your admin tablets that you'll use for the same day registration process has the same issue that perhaps the state websites do, in which it shows your current elected representatives who were elected usually 2 years ago under the old district lines. So as Bushra said, there's just a difference there. And so that's why sometimes you might see information that appears outdated. It's because they're showing you your elected representatives and the district that they're representing you in, and that full redistricting process won't be complete until after the November election this year. Kay, do you want to chime in on the other question there about the maps? I know we're sending out maps that reflect the new district lines. Are we sending out maps that also have the old district lines?
I don't believe so. I think it's just the new supervisor map. And then if it's a dual, then of course they'll have a separate map for showing the duals. But if they're not a dual precinct, then they'll just be getting the supervisor map.
Excellent. Yes. So if anyone has questions about their old district lines versus the new district lines, they can call the office, call the voter registration number, and Bushra and her team can help answer those. Bushra, did you have anything else you wanted to add on this?
Yeah, I just want to add, you can see your new or the voters' new Senate and House of Delegate on your precinct located, as Ravi explained on the training this afternoon. Other thing, you also on your poll pad, when you pull up the precinct, you know your precinct, House of Delegates, Senate, everything. The other thing, just simply call us and we will double check.
Thank you, Bushra. I see one or two questions here for Cord or the IT team. Cord, I see someone asked, when we pick up the poll pads, will they be turned on?
Hi, when you pick up the poll pads on Monday, they will not be turned on. They will be powered off and they will be sealed, locked inside of their box.
Thanks, Cord. And also someone asked, could you repeat the last part you said about a screen before shutdown?
Yes, so what I was referring to there is you want to leave the poll pad on the check-in screen and just close it inside of its container for transport. What that ensures is if you didn't have great cell signal inside your building, or the poll pad was unable to connect to, say, the school Wi-Fi or the county Wi-Fi, we're hoping that during transport back to our office, it'll pick up a cellular connection and be able to import its voter credit at that point. So we're hoping during its journey, it might be able to finish what it needs to do. Once it gets back to government center here, then we're going to open up the cases and power them off at that point. But yeah, we would like you to leave them on the main screen of the poll pad app as if you were going to be still checking in voters. And that ensures that it tries to upload credit as it travels back to our main office.
Perfect. Thank you, Cord. And one more question, perhaps for you or for Sean. Someone asked, where on the poll pad would it indicate that a voter is a permanent absentee voter?
Yeah, I'm going to see. Sean might know that one. I don't know that one off the top of my head. I could get that answer if need be.
Okay. Sean, did you want to chime in on that? I'm not sure if it's just the absentee issued status on the poll pad or anything else.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. We can, I'm on there now. We can certainly try. Can you hear me now? Sorry about that. We can certainly try to double check. My understanding is that it would simply is going to show the AB issued, not going to specify that it's a perm, but we can certainly try to confirm that for you.
Okay, that's what I thought too. So in general, yeah, if it says absentee issued on the poll pad for a voter and the voter comes in and says, hey, I didn't request an absentee ballot, then it's possible they're on the permanent absentee list. And you could let them know, hey, here's a form you can fill out if you'd like to be withdrawn from that list. But if they're not sure or you're not sure, by all means, call the office.
Robbie,
So
that's absolutely accurate. Yeah, any information, if they want to double check, please feel free to reach out. If they fill it out and they actually are on the perm, we'll certainly process. If not, no harm, no foul. Absolutely.
And Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been 2 years since the state, not our office, the state decided to transfer voters from an annual absentee list to a permanent absentee list. So if someone was on the list and they didn't know it, they probably already taken care of withdrawing themselves from that. Is that right?
Ravi, that is absolutely accurate. It has been so since 2021 when the change was made, notification at that time, and we've done our best to provide information both during applications and certainly when questions come up to explain that process. But at this point, a large number, I would say, argue the majority actually of people on the permanent list are those who specifically have seen that language when applying for it. We certainly try to provide a follow-up information on that as well. But again, any questions or if there's concerns about that, they're welcome to make use of those forms. Yep.
Excellent, thank you. Helen, I see a question here that I think you'd be the best person to answer, which is someone's just asking, what is turnout looking like so far? How has the voting been at the early voting satellites? Oh, perhaps Helen's not available right now. We can come back to her. Tyrone, I saw one additional question for you. Someone wanted to know just simply, how heavy are the DS200s and how easy is it to remove them and put them back into the equipment carts?
The DS200s with the base and the clamshell weighs about 38 pounds. We suggested, and the video will show, 3 persons, one on each side, one person in the front, handling the exit and the return to the cart, simply because they are top heavy and we don't want to cause injury to any one person or to the machine. But they are not that heavy. 3 people together moving them in and out of the cart will be more than sufficient, and it's a very easy and quick exercise.
So I have some questions. They relate kind of to during the day and also to the new equipment carts. And several people questioned, what do we do with the unopened ballots during the day we're told we should normally keep them locked in the cart, but will we need to keep locking and unlocking the cart during, especially this new cart, during the day to get access to things inside the cart?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me take that one. So I know many people submitted that question. I think Neil was the last person to submit it again. So here's how that happened, how that should be handled for this election. Your ballots should start in the equipment cart on election day, right? They'll be inside the ballot bin of the DS200. When you remove them from the ballot bin of the DS200, you then have two options. You can either leave the extra ballots, the packs that you haven't opened yet. You can either put them back into your equipment cart and lock them up. They must be locked up in that case. And that cart could be inside your voting room. It could be in the hallway, wherever it is, but obviously locked up. Or if you would prefer, you could keep those ballot packs at the ballot table where an officer needs to be present at all times. So that's at your discretion, but you can keep the ballots in either of those locations as long as they're being stored securely. And if they're at the ballot table, are obviously being supervised at all times.
And we had questions from a couple of chiefs in view of like how our precinct is set up, and there are just so many different roles, and our best practices for what kinds of roles, especially during the day, can be combined. And is it necessary to have a separate ballot table if I have a very small team? And then if you have curbsides and other things, how do we give breaks to officers? So it's like staff management questions of best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. So in a smaller primary election like this, you have fewer officers than you normally would. So 5 to 7 officers, most precincts will have 6 officers. So you can combine certain roles. So for example, we generally recommend that you have a separate ballot table and a separate ballot officer. But it's at your discretion, depending on how your precinct is configured. You could choose to have that individual at the check-in table, right? You could have that individual right next to a check-in officer, or you could have a check-in officer perform both duties. We still strongly recommend that you try to have a separate ballot officer if possible. It's the best practice. It helps minimize and avoid mistakes, but it's an option. The other thing you could certainly do is to combine the roles of the individual who's monitoring the voting booths and the officer who's monitoring the DS200. If you're in a particularly small voting room in this election, then one person can perform both those duties, especially if you don't have as many voters. So if you're the chief, by all means, please think about how you would divide up and rotate your officer roles throughout the day to allow for officers to still get breaks throughout the day. When I was a chief, what I tried to do is I kept myself available to deal with non-routine and curbside voters. I asked my assistant chief to rotate through all the positions, and sometimes we'd switch. And so often, even though I was the chief, you'd find me there standing right next to the DS200, handing out the I voted stickers, and I was happy to do that. And then if there was a situation that arose that required specifically my attention, then I would ask another officer to cover that duty while I stepped away and assisted a non-routine voter. So we trust all of you as chiefs and assistant chiefs to figure out the best division of duties at your precinct.
And a question that's kind of related to same day registration as well as provisional ballots. And the question relates to, is it possible to be able, even though it says to use it only as a backup, to use that paper provisional log? Because we found it helpful in making sure that the information is correctly inputted into the admin tablet so we don't miss any. Can we use that paper log for that purpose?
Sure, it's a funny question because the biggest piece of feedback we got after the November election was folks who kept asking, why do I have to put this into the paper log and the electronic log? But if you prefer, yes, you can mark the paper log if that helps you to then ensure that every entry in the paper log is then entered in the electronic log. We simply ask you to do one thing, which is to make a note at the top of that paper log that these entries have already been submitted in the electronic log. So we know that these aren't in addition to whatever might have been entered in your electronic log. Because it's possible, we hope this doesn't happen, but it's possible that you use the electronic log for, let's say, half the day, there's some issue and you have to switch over to the paper log at that time. So help us as office staff know when we see that paperwork that these entries have already been entered. Cheryl, is there anything else you wanted to add about the provisional process or just how you want the officers to return those materials? I know you said some of that already, but is there anything else as you've seen the questions that have come in?
No, I don't think so. But just to explain the reason why we like you to enter it into the electronic log is that it immediately fills in an Airtable form that we have, and that totally expedites our processing. You know, like Robbie said, we had about 6,500 provisional ballots last November. And we had teams of 40 people working 2 shifts a day to try to get them all processed because we were having to enter the data. You know, we took some from the log. We had to copy and paste spreadsheets. This goes straight into it. And so we use this, we can print reports from it, and the information that you entered is it's already there. We don't have to enter it. Rather than writing on the log that you've already entered a provisional ballot on the electronic log, just put a big check mark on the provisional ballot envelope. That's perfectly legal, it's fine. Put a check mark or put your initials, draw a smiley face, it doesn't matter. But you could do that after you've entered it. And then when you're finished, you or an election officer can look through those provisional ballots and make sure they've all got check marks on them. And then you'll know, because I know it does get busy and you can't enter them all immediately. You might have several people waiting and you're going to wait for a quiet time to put them all on the log. That's fine, but put a check mark on them and you'll know. Don't waste your time filling out 2 logs, I don't think. And then again, just to reiterate, the SDRs go in one envelope, one 1A envelope, and the other one's on the back. And don't forget to fill out the back of the 1A envelope. Often chiefs seem to not turn it over. You have to sign back there and you have to write how many envelopes are inside that log. And if you don't do that, then we have to do it, but it doesn't have an election officer's signature on it, and it should. And I don't know, Robbie may make you come in and sign that log. You know how he is. I mean, sign that envelope. So be sure to turn it over, sign it, write the number of envelopes that are on the inside. That's all I can think of.
Oh, I can assure you, Cheryl, if there are any documents with missing signatures, we will bring in the chief and assistant chief to sign them. And that's not my decision. That's in the Virginia code. So that's something that we definitely take seriously. And we hate having to ask people to come in to sign documents. So by all means, please do sign them. I see 2 questions here in the Q&A that I want to make sure we address. So one was a question about how do you handle it on the Monday setup if you don't have 3 officers available to take the DS200s out of the voting cart, out of the equipment cart? So you have a few options for this. The requirement is that you have to have 2 election officers present to cut the seal and open the cart. So if you have 2 individuals present, you can go ahead and still open the cart. You don't have to take the DS200s out, but you can access some of the other materials and set them up, obviously lock up the poll pads, things like that. Also, let's say you have 2 officers and the spouse of one of the officers. That's also acceptable. That third person doesn't have to be an election officer as long as you trust them and they're able to help. You could also contact your rover. They could come and help you out. If you're the chief and no one else is available for setup, contact your rover. They can serve as the second person that meets the requirements to help open that cart. And then as it relates to taking the cart out, the DS200s out of the cart, there's a procedure, and we'll show you this in that video we'll send you, where essentially you are tilting it out of the cart. So it's not as heavy as you might think. You're not lifting it out of the cart, you're tilting it out and bringing it out. And then the same process for putting it back in. So it doesn't require a huge amount of strength. What you do need is 3 people for stability and to make sure that someone doesn't, let go or drop it on one side. We definitely want to make sure that doesn't happen. The other question I see here that a number of folks asked was about firearms at the polling place. So I wanted to provide some follow-up and clarification on that. And then if Beth, if you have anything you want to add on that, feel free as well. But essentially, as I said earlier, firearms are generally prohibited in all polling places with very limited exceptions, generally for law enforcement officers. So what should you do if someone does show up with a visible firearm and wants to vote at your polling place? Well, for one, politely inform the individual that firearms are prohibited by Virginia code at polling places and ask them to return to their vehicle and lock their firearm in their vehicle and then come back and vote. If the individual is not willing to do that or causes issue or disturbance, you're welcome to call our office for help. But ultimately, we want you to be safe and feel safe and secure, and just to ultimately, to get voters processed in and out. So try your best to follow the law, inform voters and other individuals of the law, and try to follow those laws and procedures. And otherwise, call us if you need further assistance. All right, I know we're past our 3 o'clock time to finish here. Jean, do we have any final questions as we wrap up here in a couple minutes?
Just one, and they're kind of related, and I think maybe Cord might be able to answer these. There are two. One is, have you tested Wi-Fi in all locations? We had a major problem with this at my precinct in November. We had no cell phone coverage except outside in the parking lot. And then, does the poll pad need to have reception to upload data at the end of the day? Because my precinct has no reception for cell phones.
Yeah, thank you. I can jump in and I can answer that. So we did at one point, I believe it was a couple years ago, but we tested cellular signal at every single voting location. Unfortunately, there are a few voting locations, specifically if you're deep inside of a building, you might be inside the cafeteria, inside a school, and cellular signal just does not penetrate. What we have changed for this time around is we have now gotten the school's Wi-Fi loaded on the admin tablets. So if you're at a Fairfax County public school and they have Wi-Fi broadcasting into the location that you're at, hopefully your admin tablet should automatically pick that up. There's nothing you need to do, and you should be able to submit your provisional log that way. Unfortunately, there may be one or two locations where there's no Wi-Fi broadcasting and you don't get any sort of cellular signal. In that case, you would just need to do the paper provisional log. In terms of the voter credit uploading from the poll pads, that's precisely the reason why we asked you to leave them on. So if there is no signal at your location as they travel back to our office, or as they're waiting in our office before we check them and power them off, we're hoping at some point they will get signal and they will submit the voter credit.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cord. I see one final question in here. And actually, I think we've answered all the questions that have come in through the question and answer feature. We received about 175 questions. If we didn't answer it live on video, we probably answered it in writing. And what we are happy to do is to take all of these, kind of compile them, simplify them, combine like-minded questions, and send out sort of an election officer FAQ by the end of the week. Well, one question I saw come in the Q&A feature a while back was, what does the turnout look like in this election for a single party primary versus a dual party primary that we might have had in the past? So this is something I looked at carefully when we figured out how many ballots to order for every precinct. So in past single party Democratic primaries, the average turnout has been 3% to 9%. And often it was around that 5 or 6% range. So we don't know what it'll be this election. There are some contests that appear to be much more competitive than others. But ultimately, our job is not to take any sides in this. Our job as the Office of Elections, and your job as election officers, is to simply make sure that the election is conducted fairly, securely, accurately, and ultimately successfully. And so we appreciate everything that you all are doing to help ensure that that happens. Jean, I don't think I see any other questions for us to answer. Is that right?
Yep.
All right. So with that, I want to take a moment to say thank you to all of you, our wonderful chiefs and assistant chiefs, for agreeing to serve in this election, for joining us for this chiefs briefing. We know it's not easy to take 2 hours out of your time today. I want to remind you that we'll be sending you an email later today with a quick form to fill out that indicates that you watched this briefing and understood the content. If you have any further questions that weren't answered, or you want more information, or if it's specific to your individual precinct, feel free to give us a call in the office or to send us an email. We're happy to follow up with you. So with that, thank you very much to Jean, and Elise for helping moderate all the questions and providing information today. Thank you to the members of the election officer team for supporting each of you as chiefs and assistant chiefs over the past few months and in the week ahead before Election Day. Thank you to all my fellow office staff, managers, and senior staff for everything they've done to help prepare all the different procedures and policies and equipment and things you need for Election Day. And of course, thank you to each of you as a chief and assistant chief for serving. Many of us started as a chief or assistant chief out in the field. We know exactly what it feels like a week before Election Day and ultimately on Election Day. And we're trying to do our best to help support you and to make our procedures as simple and straightforward as possible while still following all legal requirements. Thank you very much again for your time this afternoon. And we look forward to you having an excellent Election Day. Take care.
Bye.